I love the energy of this interpretation, Andrew, and also like the leanness of it. I feel that it's pretty strong. We just recently had another octet interpretation. This was actually of the first movement rather than the second. And it's interesting to sort of compare the two, not to say one being better than the other, but just to see like how certain problems were solved by either. I think there's a lot that's strong in that other interpretation as well. And of course, there's room for improvement here too. But like this still just has a wonderful sense of leanness and spareness, and kind of does everything that it needs to do without having to expand too much. And I think that the core is, or the instrumentation is really nicely balanced. And I especially like the role of the bassoon. It just is perfect in a lot of places. Okay. Now, having said that, let's jump in with some evaluation criteria. And this, I've been so heavily relying on the first movement criteria, so my brain is really familiar with them, but I've only done a handful of the second movement ones. So apologies if I sound a little sketchy from time to time. Also, I'm kind of in the recovery phase from a long COVID relapse, and it's early in the morning, and I've got a big rehearsal scheduled with New Zealand Symphony Orchestra that I'm really looking forward to. They're doing an entire program's worth of scores by me, which is really, really fun. But I won't be able to attend the performance because it'll be in Auckland, and I just don't have the wherewithal to drive all the way up. It's like the equivalent of driving from like Los Angeles to San Francisco and back, right? It's that kind of thing. So I don't really have the energy to drive up there and deal with downtown traffic and parking and stuff like that. I mean, parking's insane in Auckland. And then and Airbnb stuff, and it's just a ton of stuff to worry about. So let's just focus on your score, and that's my lame excuse for being a little iffy. Now, I'm noticing that the mix in your mock-up on the first violin part is just intensely huge, and I'm wondering if you were taking my suggestion in the Pitfalls video a little bit too much to heart. That was to kind of turn up the first violin part a little bit to get more of a context of the kind of orchestral proportions according to that period, right? Like where the first violins really led the orchestra. In this situation of an octet, it's absolutely not the thing that you want to do. You want a mock-up where everything is really evenly balanced. Like listening to a lot of these parts, like where you just have strings, the first violin feels twice as powerful as any of the other strings. And then like when you get to like some of these parts here where things start to sort of trade off, it just starts to fall apart because of the first violin part being so powerful. And of course, it's so insanely powerful here that I can't hear, I can barely hear the winds at all, right? It should be the other way around. It should be the wind should be dominating, and especially the horn as well. Okay, so I'm wondering if that's partially my fault, but really like the balance here is very weird in the mock-up, and that's a shame because it's such a strong idea. Okay, so let's talk about my first set of criteria. Okay, shifts of dynamic and registers imply contrasts of texture. I mean, you do that, and it's just a little strange because like I feel that you may be like shooting yourself in the foot slightly here by having the flute be an octave higher. right? So in the position that it is now, like it sort of absorbs, or it's absorbed by the first violin part, especially with it cranked like that. But you know, it's still like in this octet kind of arrangement, you could put the flute doubling the first violin, you know, because it's such a chamber kind of an approach that, yeah, I mean, the flute is not going to contribute all that much, but you know, it's still, you know, or you could reorganize these parts so that so that like the that like you don't even need any flute, right? Yeah, I mean, I almost feel like even though it kind of goes against a lot of my advice, I would almost like prefer to see the flute an octave down rather than kind of using it for its resonance, because it sort of messes up the scheme like going forward, right? Yeah. And then bum 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 dun 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 dun. Yeah, so like, but all that aside, dun 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 dun. You know, I don't even think you need the slurs here. Like, you know, up down up down up down, right? It works a lot better, right? Like, and you know, dun dun dun. Like you could even like let go, like get rid of the slur here. Up down up down down up down up down up down up down. You know what I mean? It's like I just feel it. You know, like you just maybe need less than you think. Now this is very cool in here, but why is the clarinet forte here? Maybe this is a like copy paste error or something like that. And this should be. I mean, I think. I mean, I don't understand. I don't understand why this is forte, except for maybe just an error. But ba-da-dum. I don't think there's no need for the middle voice to stand out here. It just ruins the whole effect of everybody else who's trying so hard. And you know, shouldn't both of these parts have the slur, the bassoon and the flute, and the horn too, or just none of them, right? Just go da da da. Yeah, and I mean, and if that is the case, then you should be repeating the F, right? Da da da, right? But I mean, other than that, it's pretty cool. You might not even need the yeah. I'm sort of thinking about the um, function of the horn in here. I guess it's okay. Yeah, that's okay. That's okay. Yeah. Sorry, it's like I should have reminded you to maybe we could have worked a little bit on this mock-up in this score after you sent it to me. You know, like transposing parts, no key signature on the horn, and like correcting any you know any weirdness in the mix. But okay, we'll just work with it the way it is. I'm not gonna harp on it endlessly. Okay. But yeah, you might want to think whether or not this like maybe just a touch of Menno here. You know, ba da dun ba ba da 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 ba 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 da bum bum da 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 ba 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 da ba ba you know, and so on. Yeah. So all right. So what did I want from everybody going forwards was smooth and not awkward, maintaining nervous energy throughout, ending the phrase with finality, framing the next part, and textural and dynamic expansion. So like you tick all those boxes, and I like the way that you pull back on your upper winds. But I'm not so sure that you need the doubling like this. Do you know what I mean? This, and man, you can just really hear like just the the first violins are scorching. Well, I promise not to harp on that. But yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's so stripped down. Do you know what I mean? Like, I kind of wish that, like maybe like right in here, like there could have been more support to the middle voice by clarinet and horn. Right. Yeah, but this is good right in here. Yeah, I mean, that's one approach. I mean, and it's totally, I mean, like, yeah, that détaché bowing, which, people might think, oh, that just means it's detached, right? No, no, no. Okay, it's just like it's a kind of bouncing stroke where the middle of the bow kind of bounces back and forth. And like with that energy, with that kind of slightly bouncy energy, like you can just play these like motoristically. I don't want to say mechanically because that's like not the way that you think. I mean, are you being mechanical when you are running, when you're doing running, right? Are you being mechanical when you're doing cycling? No, I mean, you might be being motoristic. You might be using your body as a motor to get you from one place to the next, but it's not a machine. I mean, yes, I mean, in the sense of like physics, it's a machine, but you are not a machine. You're a creature, right? So, yeah, so it's possible to do this. It's one of these things where, like, I think, like, for the sake of the mock-up, you could have like a mock-up version that has like staccato marks. Like if you're finding that that the articulation of the sound set is really slushy, then you could like add a little staccato or maybe like mezzo staccato with like which is like, of course you wouldn't want to do this mezzo staccato in real life, but just to try to get like the right kind of response. But yeah, like once again, just really bright on the so bright on the first violin part that I couldn't quite hear the rest of this to work. I mean, of course, like I don't really need that. I can just like look at it and see it. But if people were having problems, that's why. Here's where like I would say that maybe staccato wouldn't be out of order for the upper wind parts. All right. Okay. So, with this stuff here, I think that you are neglecting something that I talked about in the pitfalls video, and that is the need of the players to feel the on beat, right? So it would be better for your bassoon part to hit this B, right? So you have this, so like this is great. So you're going ta ta ah, right? Ta ta ah. So say ta ta ah, and then like if this player goes ta ta ah, and this player goes ta ta ah, and so on, like and so on and so forth. So even if their pitch can't be heard, like at F sharp here, like would be pretty invisible from the flute, or just like would be kind of, but like if they just like hit it, then they have like of a reference to where the downbeat is or the upbeat, right? So like they just really, then they can really nail a lot of this stuff. And then this is all great, like the trading off between the parts. That's great because everything is like on the beat. So I would just say, like the way to solve this problem is to have a little starting beat, a little 16th beat going doink, and then da. So they're counting themselves 1, 2, da, right? And this person would be going ta 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 ta. It's so much better than ta 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 ta. Do you see what I mean? There's just like there's no feeling of like where's the, like they could easily push things half a beat, forward or backward, especially with a community player, like community level orchestra or student wind band or whatever, right? So just heed what I say. Make sure that like there is some reference point, some connection point. Okay. And then here you got this bon da da da. All right. And Like, you do this for about 3 bars, and that is the absolute limit, right? And it's still perilous. Like, bringing in the bassoon player, at least you bring them in on the beat. But I'm not so sure about the flute player. So the bassoon part is like on the upbeat. Here too, right? Yeah, so this is, I feel, perilous, the way that you've thrown these little asides. But it's just for 1 bar. But, like, think about it this way, Andrew. What are you risking here? What you're risking is 5 to 6 minutes working just on this bar in rehearsal, which could have been used to, like, get a better sound out of other parts and so on and so forth. It's not that this is impossible or anything like that. It's just a question of woodshedding it so that your flute player gets used to coming in naturally just right after the clarinet, and the horn player gets used to coming in naturally right after the bassoon player, right? Okay. And then, like, looking at where that is, just back before the re-entrance at bar 32, do you want to emphasize the kind of oddness of this by having, like, a pausa, right? So you have this, dun, dun, dun. Do you see what I'm saying? Like, the breath is something that you actually hear in piano versions, right? The piano player will just, like, bum, bum, bum. They just give themselves a teeny bit of a breath so they can just jump right back into it. And, that is something that you could easily have done here too, right? But you don't have to. Yeah. So with, adding on the beat, kind of doubling and so on and so forth, I would say that you solve some of the problems. You get the momentum and the precision and the clarity, and, like, the positioning of the instruments, like leading upwards in the, and then kind of dipping downwards into the horn part and so on, and bassoon. I think that all works pretty well. Okay, and I like the support of the pizzicato and like this little forte piano sustain note in the horn. So that's all really cool. So, like, no question about it. Like, here I'm, like, just bullet pointing, all the really great stuff that you did while I got obsessed with, like, the mechanics of it. Sorry about that, but that's the nature of this particular movement. Okay, so we come back in. And then, like, here, you got no problem doubling the flute at the same pitch as the first violin, and then, like, you echo, like, with winds rather than with strings. So I think that is such a cool idea. So look, I mean, if you presume that this is workable here, then I just think you should do it here, right? Because otherwise, like, let's say that the flute player does not allow themselves to get absorbed by the first violin, then this is you're coming down. You're not going up, right? In the piano part, what's exciting is that Beethoven is saying da 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 ba ba da 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 da. Right, we're going even higher. Ba ba da da bum bum. So, like, I think that the arc is an incredibly important thing, right? So I think having this protuberance at the beginning messes up the whole emotional meaning for the rest of the passage. So maybe that should have been one of my criteria. Okay, so this works, right? So, like, just keeping everything kind of low. You might have. Okay, all right. So let's talk about period for a second. You know what might have been stronger here? Like, in certain respects, would have been to have, and more period, right? Would have been to have oboe, clarinet, bassoon, and horn, right? Because then, like, the oboist has no problem going, and they've got that range up to D and C sharp and so on. Like, no big deal. And they can speak louder in the middle and so on. Right? And you don't have problems of the flute being sucked dry by, in close proximity to other instruments. Yeah, and this is really kind of cool, the way that you are throwing in this kind of low stuff here and the horn and so on. Yeah, I mean, look at how low this scoring is. If this part were transposed, we would have a better idea of what the player reads and how playable it is and everything else, right? And you could also see just how high you are actually rising here, up to these high written Gs for the player. But, I mean, it's not that that's a bad thing, but it's just, it's proportionally better. So, look, Andrew, like, you are a keen, you have some excellent craft here. You should be scoring transpose. You should be learning to score transpose. You should be writing transpose parts, not just transposing the score afterwards like I would ask you to do. You know what I mean? You should see what the player sees, and you should work that into your perception of how to score for the instrument from ground up. All right? You're that good. I think you should set that challenge for yourself. All right? By our next encounter, perhaps, if you choose to participate next year. All right. Yeah, so it's just fun turning tables here. I think that the parts for the most part, work pretty good. Yeah, and and the horn part is just real tasty right in there. And then here, like, this is just a reversal of before, right? Where you had you had the winds and then the strings leading forwards, right? So here you have the winds and the strings, with the strings leading to the winds taking over, right? And yeah, and this is like, this is actually balanced in the mix, really nice. And then, like, when the first violins come in, they just like wreck everything. It's just like a truck driving in there. Okay. Yeah, so pretty workable. Like, this goes so fast that, like, it's not a huge issue about players running out of breath. It's just like, the duration of breath thing becomes more of a problem, like, when you're really pushing it up to, like, say, fortissimo or whatever. But it would be the kind of thing where I would kind of want, with all of this repeated stuff, I'd want a slightly slower tempo, like, like, we're going to 120, just a little bit, like, I'd say, like, maybe 112 or 116, maybe, just to help them play with more precision and so on. And, if there was even just like a tiny little place to sneak a breath, I would say, like, maybe around, so, yeah. So what if they snuck a breath right here? Do you know what I mean? Just like, so just stop here and then continue on, right? So this is just the perfect place to take a breath. Okay, and then, yeah, then you have your strings gradually adding strength and color and everything else and staying down. Okay, alrighty, so you probably already know what I'm going to say here. And that is, it's same comments as before, my friend. And that is just, there's nothing wrong with this second violin player hitting the on beat here, right? And there's nothing wrong with this first violinist hitting the on beat there, right? And so on. Yeah, it won't take away from the sense of the lines being thrown back and forth between the players. Now, this is just a total, I mean, you could hear it was kind of a mess, right? And then this, especially like with the first violin part cranked up so high, it just suddenly seemed to completely fall apart. And then, yeah, look, what are the consequences of this? Making it work is going to be possibly, with a community group, maybe like an extra 6 minutes of rehearsal you don't have. So take my advice. Try to have trading off parts that, at least they, look, if your trading off was on the beat, right, rather than in the middle of the beat, like if you had these two parts, let's say this tuplet and this tuplet in the first violin, and this tuplet and that tuplet in the second violin, right, going back and forth like that, then instant solving of problems. Or it won't solve all problems, because there's also the player's awareness and precision and everything else. But it'll solve that problem of just being able to stay with the conductor's baton. All right. But if you're going to do this half beat kind of or half bar kind of a thing, then you're just going to have to throw in some things that some little anchor points. Okay. Yeah, but just like second violin coming in here on the and. Viola going, da-da, 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 boom. I mean, it just really feels like it's falling apart too. Like listening to it in the mock-up. So I feel this just needs a little bit more work right in here, with all respect. But I really love the, boop, 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 beep, doop, bop, bop, and then dun, 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 right? Oh man, I wish you had gone into D, because I'm just so eager to look at versions that have that, right? All right, but yeah. So like, there's kind of less. I mean, since it's just an octet, there are less issues of orchestration and balance and everything else to work out, because like it's just like it's like you're taking a double quartet kind of approach. And it's just fairly simple to like work out a lot of the problems and so on, and so that's why this evaluation is quite a bit shorter, right? But I think that the problems are pretty easy to solve, because the scoring is pretty solid, I would say, Andrew. So yeah, so just keep those things in mind. Learn to compose transposing, or at the very least, send me transposed scores. Just listen to your mock-ups a little bit, and if they are way out of balance, then do a new mix in your, if that's easy. If it's not, then maybe I can do a better mix from the Music XML. Using Note Performer. Anyway, I mean, yeah, totally cool score though. Like, I mean, maybe work out some bowings or some other kinds of things. I mean, I'm sort of just picking at crumbs here, because there's so much great about this score that like I don't really need to be, giving you huge amounts of advice with it. Great work, Andrew. And look, thanks so much for, I mean, you are a really righteous member of the community, and I really love your positive, calm approach. I'm noticing that things are kind of slacking off a little bit in the comments. Please, everybody, I absolutely need this to get through like the next 6 weeks. I'm gonna need, people jumping back in and helping me get the momentum back up. It just would be hugely appreciated, And Andrew, you always have very thoughtful insights. If those could be applied to other people's scores, I just appreciate it from the bottom of my heart. And so everybody out there watching this, or you're still listening to my babble, you know what to do. Give Andrew some feedback here. Make it strong, make it helpful. Even just a little bit of appreciation, I'm sure, would go a long way. So I think I've got yet another evaluation in me I'm going to try to get done before I go to these rehearsals. Of course, these uploads are going to be spaced out over a day or two. So yeah. Wish me a good rehearsal, and I will see you guys very soon in the next video.